Hearing loss can be caused by a variety of diseases and genetic disorders. Biological effects include damage to the hairs and nerves in the cochlea, which is a vital part of the ear. According to the CDC, 50 to 60% of hearing loss in babies is caused due to genetic influences. Hearing loss causes a variety of cognitive effects as well, especially in children, including depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. Because deaf people struggle to communicate with hearing individuals, they can experience many issues in social situations. For example, they may struggle to participate in group discussions, large social events, or communicate within the workplace. This can cause social anxiety, difficulties in relationships, and other harmful social effects. To combat this, deaf people have a variety of needs. They need a stronger support system, written communication in work environments, visual emergency alarms, and telephone signals. Deaf people are forced to spend a good chunk of money on assistance such as an ASL interpreter, hearing aids, and sometimes even a cochlear implant, which insurance companies do not always cover. C.J. Jones is a well-known deaf actor, motivational speaker, and comedian who played the role of Joseph in Baby Driver. He was born September 29, 1950, to a hearing family. However, at the age of 7, he became deaf due to spinal meningitis. C.J. Jones also starred as a lead role in Door in the Woods and will also be seen on Castle Rock in United Shades of America.
C.J. Jones has faced prejudice in the entertainment industry. In an interview, C.J. Jones stated that it was the lack of understanding about a deaf actor's ability to act, directors not wanting to pay for interpreters, and most of all, ignorance. Very few talent agents will go out of their way to educate casting people about their client. Due to his race and disability, he had trouble getting roles. Jones struggled for many years to find himself a good talent agent who would not look at his disability as a way to determining his capability. Deaf people bear the scars of daily discrimination and oppression. They are denied humanity as free subjects, and the relationship between the hearing community and the deaf community has often been strained due to a continued lack of understanding of the deaf community and its values, and the subsequent paternalistic perspective of hearing people and knowing what is best for the deaf community and forming policies without their input. People like C.J. Jones are treated inferior to those that can hear as people who cannot make moral decisions for themselves or others. We are embodied creatures who experience the world through our physical forms, so casting directors not considering C.J. Jones as an equal candidate due to his race and disability, they are denying his personhood. In an interview, he recalls that he couldn't just go in for an audition and expect a role. According to IglesiaMarshall.com, access to mental health care is limited to the deaf, and the rates of sexual abuse among them are also staggering. Professional schools have refused to provide accommodations to deaf students despite the Americans with Disabilities Act. Many medical providers ignore this law and do not provide ASL interpreters. By ignoring a deaf person's needs for facilitating communication between hearing and deaf individuals, they are forced to have poor relationships, denying their humanity. We are to live well with others in justice to glorify God. The lack of effort to incorporate accommodations for the deaf community portrays how society violates how we are all created by God equally. Both deaf and black communities have been viewed by the larger, predominantly hearing and white society as comprising a minority community. Discriminatory practices can be traced back to segregation times in the United States. Black organizations were focused exclusively on fighting for equality only for African Americans, not the black deaf communities. Historically, issues have been normalized between the mainstream hearing community and the minority deaf community, damaging their personhood.
C.J. Jones has responded to his difficulties with positivity. According to Jones's website, Jones has used his disability as an advantage, saying that sign language has helped him to connect with people. In an interview, Jones said that he has had to put in more effort to make it in entertainment due to his disability. However, Jones kept a positive outlook, and today he advocates for deaf actors. Jones claims that everyone must work with each other to achieve fairness for minority groups. C.J. Jones says that by making art, he was able to unite people and bring joy to others. People must recognize other people as valuable. All humans are embodied. Even if bodies are different, they still make us human. By basing judgments of someone on their disabilities, a person disrespects their human dignity. Humans are also all created in the image of God, and humans are all equal to each other. By not hiring deaf actors, people are denying them equality and making them lesser, when in reality they should be treated as equals. People should work to recognize deaf people as humans with goals and talents. In history, people who are deaf have traditionally been stereotyped as unable to fulfill big roles or treated as second-class citizens, which shows how history has affected them. Time magazine even reports that humans humans put a man on the moon before closed captioning was widely available. People should work to help deaf people achieve their goals through accommodations such as closed captions so that they can help to counteract some of the historical issues deaf people have faced. Hearing people are often afraid of deafness because they do not like to confront such heavy topics. A deaf person could perhaps feel embarrassed to talk in sign language with a person in public, which harms relationships. People should work to communicate with deaf people in public instead of ignoring them. Doing things such as facing the deaf person directly can help them to understand what you want to say. The way that deaf people are treated can often be attributed to obstacles to moral knowledge. NAD reports that deaf people and people with hearing loss, especially people of color with these conditions, are hired less in entertainment. In order to create an authentic story about deaf people, deaf actors should be hired to act as deaf characters. NAD reports that deaf people are often misappropriated in the media. Goat.com reports that when deaf actors are hired, people may become more aware of the deaf community. Therefore, there seems to be 3 types of moral obstacles involved with this issue. Vincible ignorance is present because casting directors could learn about the talent of deaf actors. Instead, they may choose to cast hearing people. Inadvertence is present because people may simply not be aware of the talent in deaf communities. For both of these issues, people should increase their awareness of the importance of deaf people seeing themselves portrayed in the media. Habits are present because people may be so used to casting hearing people that they do not even think to consider deaf actors. By hiring deaf people, directors may be able to influence other directors to correct their habits.
People with disabilities are often treated poorly, and the first step in combating this mistreatment is recognizing their humanity.
We can show this by giving deaf people equal opportunity for employment, representation in a political setting, integrating learning about people with disabilities in school, employing deaf actors, and recognizing that people with disabilities have emotions, lives, and passions just like everyone else.
You can help on an individual level by giving the appropriate accommodations if your friend is deaf, so they can feel included, removing any biases against people who are hard of hearing, and not judging if you see someone with hearing aids or signing.
When each person corrects these biases themselves, we can all work together to fix the issue. According to the principle of subsidiarity, we must deal with problems at the lowest level of society first. So, the solutions must begin at individual and local level. Some ways to start is to provide necessary accommodations at the local level, especially in work environments, including making written memos and company communications, visual emergency signals, an ASL interpreter, and other workplace arrangements.
Both state and national governments must enforce laws such as the American with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, both of which ensure that disabled people receive any auxiliary services they need and protect them from being discriminated against.